Could you tell them what sort of a person you are?
I don't know at all. I just live moment to moment. So you cannot confine me into a personality. You cannot define me. You cannot predict me. I don't know even myself what I am going to do tomorrow morning. I am simply as open as the existence and as indefinable as the existence itself.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Goddamn, today I got a special surprise for everybody. Shit, it's a surprise for me. Alright, any true goddamn fan will have heard the name Joshua at one point or another. And lo and behold, guess who we got on the show, guys? Our very own goddamn technician, Joshua. Welcome to this side of the camera, man. How does it feel?
Thanks. It feels a little strange, honestly.
Okay. I know this isn't your first time. I know you have some projects that you kind of get on and do your thing behind the camera, but this must be your first podcast that anyone's invited you on.
It is, and as you know, that there's a very wide variety of things that happen in this room. I think this is one of my favorite things that happens in here, and I like that it happens on Mondays. Gives me something to look forward to coming back to work. It's been fascinating listening to all your guests, and hearing everyone's different stories and backgrounds, and you've got quite the diverse friend group.
Yeah, you know what? And we were just talking about this too, because you run these not just for me. Right, we're at a public library which anyone has access to should they want to use that resource. And even today, the person that was just coming in to shoot their project, like, amazing people. So I think that's something that we have a similarity in our occupation, is being able to meet people from different backgrounds with cool different stories. And you know, I think it kind of adds to the appeal of what we do.
It does. There's definitely never a dull day.
And you know, for the people that watch this, they've seen, I don't know, however many hours. This is episode 9 or 10 by now.
I think so.
They've seen however many hours of the show, but what they haven't seen is all the hours off camera. You and I talking and speaking and kind of sharing thoughts with each other. And you've taught me a lot, technically, how to run programs, how to, you know, do things that I otherwise wouldn't have had the skills to do for free, right? You've taught me all these things, which is great, and we've had our discussions about knowledge and the acquirement of knowledge and how valuable is it, right? In what sense?
Right.
And so I think it's cool to be able to get you up here and actually kind of just do what we do naturally while the camera's rolling. And
right.
So that's kind of, you know, that's kind of the direction I want to take. As you know, you're no stranger to this. I like to give my guests the opportunity to sort of introduce themselves, say whatever you want about yourself, and you know, sort of lay out who is Joshua.
Well, Joshua, I am artistically a musician first.
Okay.
I play violin, have for pretty much my whole life.
Really?
I just turned 40 back in May. So violin's kind of where I started out artistically.
Okay.
I
didn't even know that about you. Of all the conversations.
I guess that's true. Out of all the hours we've talked.
Very humble. We have talked a lot about a lot of things, but you keep your passions and personalities close to the chest. I like that.
Yeah, I've discovered throughout life that it's something that you choose to share with certain people.
Right.
You know.
And in this case, the entire world.
Exactly. The internet.
Cool.
But yeah, music has always been a passion of mine. Played in an orchestra for a long time. Got to do some traveling with that. Then at some point along the line, I developed an interest in cinematography.
Okay.
And participated in a couple of documentary competitions and had a lot of fun with that.
Okay. Let me, just to kind of paint and illustrate the timeline for myself. So, what age did you start playing violin?
I think it was about 3.
3. So your entire school, your young educational career, you were a passionate violinist.
Yeah.
Violiner?
Violinist.
Violinist.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I fortunately had grandparents who were very supportive.
Okay.
I grew up in a part of Denver that wasn't very well off. So the school that I went to didn't have a music program.
Okay.
So my grandparents, when they saw that I had an interest in it, paid for a private violin teacher. And so I did that all the way up until about 6th grade.
Okay.
And then auditioned for Denver School of the Arts.
In 6th grade.
Yeah.
Nice.
And went there from 6th through 12th grade. It was one of the very first schools in Denver that had an integrated program.
And that's not a public school.
It's considered a magnet school.
Okay.
So
Arts magnet.
It is public, but it's by audition.
Oh, cool.
And so there's generally a pretty long waiting list of kids to come in there, which actually was a pretty good fire under your ass.
Yeah.
You know, because
I'm sure you perform right and you get up a couple slots, I would imagine.
And your grades drop below C, and they put you on academic probation. And if you don't clean it up by the semester, you got 10 people in line behind you waiting to take your spot.
Yeah. Powerful motivator.
And they really tried hard to prepare us for what it's like to be a professional artist. We had a lot of guest artists from symphonies and things like that come in and work with us. And actually, the whole reason why I'm not a professional musician now is partially because of that.
They open your eyes to what it really looks like, and it's not all it's not all cake and pork chops.
No. And I realized that I love music way too much for it to be my job.
Yeah. And you've heard that go both ways. Like, I think I've said it. You do something you love and you never work, but on the other hand, you do something you love for work and then you end up hating it. So it's like, where do I?
Exactly. And this.
But you're still passionate about it.
Yeah.
So that's good. So you didn't end up hating it.
I still love it.
Good.
And it's more for me. It's going back to kind of what we talked about off camera before this. It's part of that like mind-body balance for me.
Right.
Violin for me is an outlet for when I don't have the words. So when I'm really angry or depressed or even really happy for that matter.
Yeah.
I feel like that it's one of the only outlets that I have that comes anywhere close to actually expressing how I feel.
Okay. I don't want to prematurely jump into anything, but I just out of my own curiosity, where do you think that fits in to your health levels spiritually? Do you think that does anything for your spiritual health?
I think it does. I think it does.
That's cool. And we can divulge more on that as we get to it. But I'm just curious. I just want to, before I forget.
Yeah, I think it definitely plays a role in that. There have been periods in my life where I've gone a pretty long time without picking it up.
Yeah.
And then when I do pick it up again, I'm like, well, what the hell was I thinking? Like,
yeah. And then you feel good again. You're like, this is what was missing.
Yeah.
Because in that time, that time period where you took a somewhat of a break, right? You might have noticed different things going on in your life and your mind and your brain.
Exactly. For a lot of people, pets, dogs, cats, is kind of their trusted friend that you can tell all your secrets to and
confidant.
And they're never gonna stab you in the back.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly hope not.
And I feel like don't get me wrong, I love animals, but I feel like the violin is kind of that friend for me.
Yeah.
that you can just divulge everything to.
Yeah, put your heart and soul into it and trust that it's never going to come back on you
Exactly.
in a negative way.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man. I like that.
Going with the spiritual aspect of things, it's interesting that you say that, because there's only been twice in my life that I've been like so spiritually moved that I got like emotional
Yeah.
and like cried.
Spiritual breakthrough, maybe, would you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first time was when I saw my brother be born. And, you know, the whole miracle of life
Right.
kind of thing.
How old were you when that happened?
9.
Okay.
Um,
So pretty profound things happening inside your little adolescent mind.
so, you know, it really kind of made me think, you know, at a very young age about life and what it means and why
Yeah.
we're here. And the only other time I've ever been moved that way spiritually was when our orchestra went to Canada. We went to Montreal and we performed the Requiem at the Basilica of Notre Dame.
Wow.
And that was, just thinking about it, it gives me
He is
goosebumps.
getting goosebumps. I can physically see them. Wow.
It's
Wow.
it was one of the times where you realize, you know, if you've ever played any kind of music, you've got rests in different places.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
where
Alto sax.
you'll play and then rest for a little while.
Right.
And every now and then you'll get a piece where there's these big long rests, and you're like, what the hell am I sitting here waiting for? It's not until you get into a building like the Basilica that you're like, oh, that's why it's that long.
Let what just happened kind of sink into the air and sort of let everybody feel and process it.
It takes probably a good 80 to 90 seconds for a note to completely dissipate when you play it in that church.
Wow. Just the acoustics.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's like a football on a field, football and a half long.
Yeah.
It's just massive.
Wow.
But that very first note of the Requiem has a big long pause after it. And it was, and I wasn't the only one. There was a whole bunch of us just sobbing.
It's a new experience
You
for
know.
a lot of you guys, yeah.
It was definitely very, very spiritual.
Wow.
And I kind of understand better now, too, why music has been such a large part of the church for so long.
Yeah.
It just made a whole lot more sense once you were actually sitting in one and playing in it, and you're like, oh, this is why they do that.
Yeah. Music, sound wave amplification, but also there's a little bit of spiritual amplification
Sure.
there.
Sure.
Yeah. That's awesome,
Absolutely.
man. That's cool.
It
So,
was a good experience.
so you got. Sorry, we took a long detour on that. You were starting to tell me about how you got into cinematography and all that, which is where you're at now in your professional career. Did that happen after high school, post high school, somewhere during high school?
Kind of in between my junior and senior years when I kind of started getting into it.
Okay.
Honestly, it happened because I had too many off blocks.
Got bored.
Got bored, picked up...
Idle hands.
You know, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person where I just get myself in trouble if I've got nothing better to do.
It's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to know. Same here.
So I, decided to try my hand at some documentary work. And so I entered into National History Day a couple of times while I was still in high school. I did one documentary on the history of swing music.
Okay.
And that was actually really fascinating.
So National History Day, to the layman or someone who doesn't understand, like myself, is that a like a film competition?
So it's actually multimedia. So there's a
Okay.
bunch of different ways that you can enter into this contest.
As long as it's based around some kind of history.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's 9th grade through college
Oh, cool.
years. And basically you pick a historical topic, and they have different categories that you can enter into. So there's a written one where it's like an essay format kind
Right.
of thing.
Right.
There's videos, documentaries that you could do. Some of the kids did stage plays that they put together to reenact historical events.
That's cool.
So there's a bunch of different ways that you could approach that. I liked cinematography because it meant I didn't have to perform anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll try doing that. And so I started putting that together. And a part of the reason why I liked it so much is because I've always been kind of a history buff to begin with. And putting the two things together, technology and history, was just kind of a sweet spot for me.
Yeah. It is kind of a fun thought because there's somewhat of an oxymoron, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I guess just our current technology has a lot of different forms in it, and at one point the wheel was like fucking mind blowing.
It feels kind of steampunky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that.
And I don't remember who said this, but that reminds me of a quote that says that any technology sufficiently good enough at what it does is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the Salem witch trials, you think about it,
Absolutely.
You're a little too smart and you know a little too much science.
Burner.
Burner.
Yeah, it definitely is an interesting dichotomy. But that's kind of where I found my passion, and I discovered through that I really enjoy editing. Something I never would have ever thought of, but it's kind of cathartic for me.
I wish I had that. Yeah.
It's like some people it's knitting. For me, it's editing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just kind of a good way to just put blinders on to the rest of the world and focus on one single problem.
Kind of satisfying.
Yeah, and then you have, like we talked about earlier, you have a receipt for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've got something to show for your time when you're done.
Yep. Time receipts.
And people like the finished product, so it kind of gives you a sense of self-worth, I guess.
Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed is you see a lot of videos, and if you've never edited a video, you might not be able to tell that there's any editing at all. We see these things and it's just like, oh, cool, blah, 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 and then that's a nice looking video. But then when you sit behind a 5-minute video for 3 hours and then put it out to the world, it hits different, I feel like.
It does. I don't think most people realize how much is involved.
Yeah. And that's a lot of like what I was talking about earlier, all the things that you taught me. I had I had a little bit experience on YouTube or whatever, and you've seen some of my early YouTube videos, and I just couldn't do it, man. I don't have that, same passion for it that you do, unfortunately. I wish I did.
It's not for everyone.
It isn't.
It definitely isn't.
It's not for everybody.
Even in the filmmaking world, you run into people all the time who think the editors are nuts.
Yeah.
We're the ones that lock ourselves in the room, and you just don't bother them.
Right.
Most filmmakers really put their passion is behind the camera.
Yeah.
Directing and doing things like that. And while I enjoy that too, editing is nice because it feels like you got a magic wand.
Yeah.
Like I can take a pile of shit and make it pretty.
Yeah. Kind of like organizing too.
Yeah.
You get this big, well, what is something that people organize? A big box of different colored M&Ms, I guess. I don't know. And
sure.
then you just, whatever, you get the idea. To me, that's how I feel about editing. Is like, man, I got this big, ugly thing that I have to tighten up and get rid of. It's like spring cleaning,
Yeah.
And to that extent, I can empathize with what you're coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not. I don't like spring cleaning either. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started to divulge you off the path.
No, you're
there.
totally fine.
But yeah, definitely can ruffle the feathers of those who aren't really into it.
Absolutely.
And to have multiple skills like you do is not only a great thing for what you do, but it's ideal. And that kind of segues me into something that we've talked about that you opened my mind to, which is the actual, free versus paid knowledge idea, and experience versus degree, right? And kind of where that plays in, because, a lot of the things that you do here are from experience, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, because I've talked to a few different people about this, and sometimes I speaking of organizing, I need to edit it all out in my head who said what. But I think that there's a requirement here for some sort of degree in which you can bypass with a certain amount of experience. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
That hasn't always been true, but in recent years they've become much more flexible with that. I believe the actual job descriptions actually say it now, that or equivalent experience.
Okay.
But generally speaking, in the state of Colorado in libraries, all librarians typically have a master's degree.
Yeah.
And the library associates typically have a bachelor's degree,
Okay.
at least.
Yeah. And not to take anything away from that, type of education.
Yeah, and we definitely have people here who work their butts off to get those degrees so that they can have these jobs.
You have to.
So I've got respect for that. I do. As you know about me already, college was not for me. I went, I tried it, I tasted it, it was gross, I left.
Spit it out. Spit it out. Rinsed it out with something, and then, yeah.
Exactly.
Same, man.
I was on a spiritual journey at that point. I was like, this is all fine and dandy,
And I think it can be argued that, actual tactile experience can be better.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah. And you take someone who's done something for 4 years, and you take someone who's learned about something for 4 years, put them on a task, like what is the outcome going to look like?
That was highlighted a lot for me when I worked for the school district. Because another one of those places that I've worked where typically everyone there has a degree. Well, I was a paraprofessional. And it's true pretty much everywhere in Colorado. I don't know about the rest of the country, but in Colorado, they'll take any warm body off the street to do that job.
Right.
Which is not very comforting to think about.
Right. Like, hey, I'm special.
Hi. So, that is always kind of a little bit on the strange side.
Yeah.
We might have to do a little editing because I'm going to have to pause here.
Oh, yeah, pause it up.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Thanks for tuning in to this commercial break, guys. My VIP, or I like to say VIG, very important guest, has obligations in this facility in which he needed to respond to. So I appreciate your patience, and please take a few seconds to enjoy these sponsored messages. Goddamn. Hello. This message is brought to you in part, First Try No Warm-Ups, by the good people of Joint Fit and their affiliates. If you've been thinking about changing your life, or you're already ready to, and you need some advice, some guidance on health, exercise, nutrition, hit me up on Instagram. Find me, message me, get some recipes, get some workouts, get a path for your journey. And Joint Fit will 100% get you there. Thank you. Now, back to your regularly scheduled broadcast. All right, guys, welcome back. Thanks for waiting patiently. Here we are, back where we left off. Joshua.
And you can insert your first ad there in the middle somewhere.
I already did. I was shooting my commercial break marketing.
There you go.
Here just while you left, so we're all good. But it goes to show the importance, the role that you have here. And I am glad to see how much busier it's been getting, because when I first came here, it was like, well, how is all of this just accessible?
Yeah.
And we don't use it. And that just goes back to what we were talking about, free versus paid knowledge. You can go to a library and learn absolutely anything that you can learn from a classroom.
Absolutely. And I kind of, my eyes were open to that when I tried to go to college. I went to CU for all the semester. Went from being a music major to, what do you want to do with your life? I'm like, I'll be a philosophy major.
Everybody has to, yeah.
And, bought all the books and went to a class for a while. And after about the second or third month of sitting in a classroom full of people arguing about God and hypothetical questions that don't have answers, I was like, you know, this is fun. I enjoy debating philosophy with people. Again, I don't want it to be my job.
Right. Well, and that passion you have for it kind of shines through in the conversations that we have. And I haven't been able to pin down what I think. That's why I'm excited to get to sort of the end and pick your brain on it a little bit. But you seem to me to be a very open-minded individual, which I really appreciate.
I definitely strive to be as open-minded as possible.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have parents who, from the very beginning, were okay with me exploring, how I see the world.
Yeah.
And never judged me for it. My family's religion, I guess, if you want to call it that, we practice Native American spiritual beliefs.
Okay.
At home.
So you don't refer to God as God, it's Creator.
Right.
That's awesome.
And my dad led a lot of sweat lodges and things like that. So
Yeah.
our house was a revolving door. There were people in and out all the time.
Yeah.
And so spirituality's always been kind of like front and center growing up.
Yeah. Very present.
Yeah.
But not strictly mandated into your worldview.
Right.
That's awesome.
My grandmother on my dad's side was devout Catholic.
Okay.
No divorce, no condoms. Hence 8 uncles. And so she thought my dad was off his rocker. She thought he was going straight to hell for believing any of that. And he's like, Mom, you're Indian too. You know that, right?
Yeah.
And so there was definitely some tension religiously between family members, just because everybody believed
different generations,
different things, me personally, I never really settled on any one thing.
Okay.
I've always been such an analytical person.
Yeah.
I very much so believe in science.
Yeah.
But I also, like we said before, any technology good enough is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like there's a lot about the universe that we just don't understand yet.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily make it magic.
Right.
It's just knowledge we don't have yet.
Yeah. And that brings up a good segue. I'm gonna pop the question on you here, but before, so you're the first person that I ever heard explain this to me, where I think you're heading right now, about the universe and energy and how it reverberates and comes back to us. And there is theories on things that we can't prove about the universe and energy and stuff like that. That's all very scientific. And as far as that goes, tangible answers to questions that we as humans have been asking ourselves for centuries, however long we've been here. So, because I don't know as much about that as you, and I don't know where that plays into your spirituality or your understanding of God, I'm just going to go ahead and fucking ask you right now. Joshua, my friend, my confidant, my technician, what is God to you?
I guess if I had to sum it up in one word, it would have to be connection.
Okay. You don't have to sum it up in one word, but I like that. Let's branch off of that.
I think that as human beings, as individuals, we're constantly seeking validation. That our life means something.
Yeah.
And for me, spirituality is as a practice, is more about community than anything else.
Yeah.
And just kind of following the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done to yourself.
Be good, be a kind person.
Just don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
I really do want to have a t-shirt printed that says just Church of Don't Be an Asshole.
Yeah.
it's really not that complicated.
Yeah.
And you know, in my life, looking at various different religions and kind of studying what they have to offer,
Yeah.
I found that there's kind of that golden thread that goes through all of them. That no matter what religion you're talking about, no matter what faith or background it comes from, just being kind and finding love,
Yeah.
giving love, receiving love.
It's
I think
definitely
it's
not
the
as
heart of
simple as your t-shirt.
Right.
Because if the message is there, it's definitely obscured and added to and complicated.
Yeah.
You know, if it was as simple as that, then the Bible would have thousands of less pages, right?
Right.
So I think, you know, I like that, man. I like that.
You know, and like we were talking about with science, I really do believe that there is a lot of how the universe works that we're starting to find out more about now.
Yeah.
And I like to go to the topic of prayer when I speak about that, because there is some evidence that prayer is a tangible force of who we are.
You've told me about studies.
You know, whether that's through, you know, vibration or, you know, however that works. We also know now that our brains perform quantum functions like a quantum computer would. And we never even thought about those kinds of things until now, you know, now that science is kind of starting to unfold in that way.
Yeah. I mean, the Earth was flat at one point.
And I think it's interesting how the more we try to find out about the brain so that we can reproduce that kind of computing power, the more we discover about ourselves spiritually.
Yeah.
There's all these magical things happening inside our brains that we're not even aware of. And so I think that now that we're gaining a much better understanding of the relationship between what's happening in here and what's happening up here, my hope is that will kind of help humanity to evolve past some of our, you know, things that we're not so proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the hope, at least.
Yeah, kind of getting that golden thread a little bit more shiny.
Yeah.
In everybody's day-to-day.
And, you know, on the topic of prayer, like personally for me, when I pray, I'm not praying to anything.
Yeah.
I feel like it's my belief, at least, that every single thing in the universe is connected.
Yeah. So you do pray?
So I do pray, but I don't necessarily see God as like an individual or...
You're not closing your eyes and envisioning a robed figure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
When I pray, I like to visualize ripples.
Okay.
So, you know,
like your prayer as ripples?
Yeah, like throwing a stone in a pond, you know?
Kind of manifesting that energy out into the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
which was one of the studies that you were telling me about. You're gonna have to clarify this because it was a whole room full of people, and the direction was to think about something, and everybody did it, and it happened. What was that?
Yeah. So back in the late '80s, there was a study done, and it was actually more than just one room. It was a worldwide study.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
They had all of these different congregations from all around the world pray for peace all at the same time.
Okay.
So they had one specific day where everyone had they had the same prayer that everybody repeated throughout that day.
Putting out that energy into the universe.
And it was one of the lowest crime days in the U.S.
Historically.
Historically, in like the past 20 years before that.
Wow.
Now, is that a coincidence? You know, who's to say?
Yeah, you can't really.
You know, but there have been other studies too with random number generators. So it's basically just a computer that spits out random ones and zeros in no particular order.
Okay.
And they would give these to Tibetan monks. And they would say, I want you to pray for one or the other, a 1 or a 0, and focus on that.
Yeah.
And then they'd let this random number generator run while they prayed. And then when they got done, they'd pull the number generator and plug it in and see what happened. And sure enough, whatever number 1 or 0 that they were praying for was the majority of what it output.
Yeah.
Now we understand now.
That's a statistic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's mathematical. That's written and proven.
And we understand now, which we didn't when they did this test initially, but we understand quantum entanglement much better now. So the act of thinking that does have a physical effect on the outcome of what's happening around you. And we understand it well enough now that we're building computers that can calculate that, basically.
That's amazing.
And so it fascinates me.
So that's kind of, when you pray, that's sort of, in a way, what you're doing.
Exactly.
That's awesome, man.
And
Where are my atheists at?
It makes me feel like that's a tangible thing.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't feel so, ooh.
So that is very scientific, and I'm sorry to interrupt. One might even say atheistic, if that's a word. Do you consider yourself an atheist?
Not really.
Okay.
I think even though I don't believe in a single person as God,
right.
I believe that like life and existence and just being a part of that, I think that is God. Like
connection, like you said.
You know, that the connection and the wholeness of the universe.
Yeah.
Because we're nothing without each other.
Right.
And not just as humans or individuals, but as atoms. You know.
Yeah.
And so I really, and it does feel spiritual. Like it's definitely not empty and dry and just scientific.
Yeah. Black and white.
You know, and there's definitely plenty of times where, just like everybody else in life, when you come across hard times where oh God, please, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's a level of spirituality. I definitely have some disdain for organized religion to a certain level.
Yeah.
Growing up in the house that I did, we had lots of people who questioned their spirituality, who would come explore Native Americanism, and so I got to hear lots of stories over the years about how crappy the church is.
Yeah.
How they don't treat people right. And
More so people's relationship with the church rather than with God, as they understand it.
Exactly. And not only that, but there's not very many organized religions out there that are okay with my lifestyle either.
Yeah.
So, and the way I always thought
it's
is
that golden thread and getting blurred, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I never understood how in one, out of one side of your mouth you hear love everyone, and out of the other side of your mouth you hear except for the yeah, and that is a pretty obvious sort of transgression in the idea, right? Yeah.
Sort of that it's just it's contradictory. And
Well,
I've heard a few people already on this podcast alone, 9-10 episodes, talk about that, and it's like, well, it's right there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, in Native Americans, there's a saying in Lakota that translates to walk your talk, which is, it's not just in Lakota. I'm pretty sure everywhere has that saying in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. In English, it's walk your talk.
So it's there's nothing I hate more than a hypocrite.
Yeah.
I really believe if you're going to preach love, you need to
demonstrate
it.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, that doesn't happen as frequently as you'd like to see in organized religion.
Well, for you, if you think about the way you've described your understanding of God, you are showing love to your God by showing love to people and everyone and everything around you. When people focus on the idea of God as like a singular deity that commands this and this is the circumstances or the consequence, so to speak, for not following this certain set of guidelines, then now their love is going to that understanding, not to the connection. And I'm not saying either one is right or wrong. That's the whole idea of this show, is that
Right.
we don't fucking know, you know? But I think it's cool for people to think about that and have a little bit more insight and open your mind up, you
Yeah.
know? Because I really like your view and your understanding and what you just explained to me. And it makes a lot more sense on really defining that moral or that main value that we should and is really the idea behind all religions in the very beginning, or at some point or another, the concrete idea: love thy neighbor. You know what I mean? Love each other. And before you obscure that and mark up all these extra little things that people can, you know, sort of have different views on, then it really does come down to just one simple thing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. And, you know, I try to keep my mind open because I feel like it's ever evolving. The older I get, the more it changes. I don't know for the better or the worse, but it definitely hasn't stayed the same. You know, you have life experiences. You know, whether it's an event or a substance or, you know, something like that opens your mind to some other way of seeing things.
I call them spiritual boosters.
Right? So I try to keep an open mind to those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I really do believe that there is a certain amount of synchronicity in the universe, that like everything kind of happens when it needs to.
Yeah.
And again, not necessarily a God looking down going, here, this is what you asked for, this is
Right.
what you need, but
Right.
kind of that law of attraction. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you throw your rock into the pond and send that ripple out in the hopes that, you know, someone else will see that and interact with it. And so you make that connection with what you need when you need it. And so for me, that's kind of, you know, that's how you know when that's how you know your prayer worked.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
You know?
I really like that. I think that with all the analogies and everything that you said, that you've done a really good job of illustrating the way that you perceive God, and I love that.
Thank you.
I hope some people can learn, even one person can learn anything from this
Absolutely.
conversation. And I think, you know, I really feel like we're getting to a good spot to wrap up. Do you have any burning desires, last thoughts, little quotes, little favorite sayings? You want to rap? We do a little rap real quick. He's an amazing rapper. You guys, he'll never show you, but I've heard him spit some shit.
Well, if you need your computer fixed, I also run a computer business. GoGoZen.com. GoGoZen.com.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. Josh, pleasure to have you back here on
Thanks,
this side,
Austin.
man. Great things coming from you like I would have never imagined.
Well, it's good talking
I'm not
to you.
surprised, but I am impressed.
It's always great talking to you.
Thanks, man. We good? Always
I think we're
asking for
good.
it good on time. All right.
You ready for the outro?
Let's do the outro. All right, guys. That's it. Another one down. Believe it or not. On the way. We'll see you guys next week. But until then, God damn.